in Buenos Aires, where Pope Francis was born and raised, carried out most of his ministry as a priest, bishop, cardinal. We've seen an outpouring of emotion, and CNN senior correspondent David Culver is joining us now from Buenos Aires. David, you've been in Argentina for several days now. The people there, of course, knew the then Cardinal Bergoglio very well. What have you witnessed?
They did, Victor. In fact, I was just speaking to these two women here, and they said, oh, he would even send, as Pope, letters every year on certain anniversaries through fax machine. Por fax, no? Las cartas del Papa. And they said that he was just such a present figure. I'm in the way here, I'm noticing that, but I want to show you, we're on a bus, and this is one of many that's leaving this via. It's a neighborhood that is incredibly simple and humble. It's the community that Pope Francis would so often speak about. And as Cardinal, when he was in that role for 15 years, he would come visit here. And they said he would baptize their kids and grandkids. He would wash feet. He was just always a figure who was not just talk, but action. And he would put that action into place in this community in particular. And they're going to be getting on these buses. There's about 7 buses altogether. And we're hoping to get on one as well, so we don't want to lose our spot. But then they're going to the Plaza de Mayo, which is going to be right in front of the cathedral, and a mass is going to be underway shortly, and that's going to be held to remember Pope Francis. There's a whole day of events, because after that mass, then they're going to have a pilgrimage of sorts, where they're going to go to different sites throughout the city, places that then Cardinal Bergoglio would often visit, and then before that is Father Bergoglio, and before that is just Jorge Bergoglio, his childhood home, and the church where he had his first vocational calling. All of this is incredibly meaningful for these folks. And it's interesting because I was reading through one of the documents. Walk with me here. I want to give you a sense of what we're seeing. I was reading through one of the documents that's placed inside Pope Francis's coffin, and it's called the Rojito. And there was a part of that, because often church language can be very formal and feel very distant. There was a part of that that spoke to this crowd. It sounded almost like you would read a normal person's obituary, if you will. And this is a document that's supposed to really detail the biography and what this Pope did as a world leader. And I'll read you a part of that. It said, quote, "He was a simple and much-loved pastor in his archdiocese, where we are, which he traveled far and wide, even by subway and bus. He lived in an apartment and cooked his own dinner because he felt like one of the people. It's the reason he lived in Santa Marta as Pope. He said, I want to be close to people. He loved being with others around him. He didn't want to be alone and isolated. And we're seeing this today. All these buses, you can see some of these folks, they're packed. This woman waving as they're preparing now to head to the Plaza de Mayo and be part of a joint celebration. And it has been just that. People here, they so often talk about Pope Francis's humor, and they all felt it. And I was speaking to one man who was a very close friend of Pope Francis, and he said he was so quick-witted, and it was never, ever to lower somebody else. It was never to put somebody in a position of feeling lesser. It was about being self-deprecating more than anything. And he said the last time he met with Pope Francis, it was in January. And he said Pope Francis obviously couldn't walk, but he said, I'm going to see you to the door. And he said, Jorge, as he called him Jorge, you don't need to do that. And he goes, no, I need to make sure you leave. He was always one to bring smiles and laughter. And folks here, they're in this midst of the balance of grief, perhaps, where sometimes they'll feel a deep sadness, but then you'll see they're laughing, smiling, and seeming to celebrate his life.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we heard from Cardinal Ray this morning in his homily, and how that degree of approachability that the Pope had personally, he brought to the church, in which he said that this is a church capable of bending down to every person regardless of their beliefs or conditions, the church a home for all. So it's great to hear those personal stories from those from the Archdiocese that knew him very well before he was elected Pope. I want to take you to a very special place, Buenos Aires, Argentina, where there is a Mass happening now. Pope Francis was born there in 1936, and he served there until he was selected as the 266th Pope in 2013. Thousands have been gathering overnight in honor of the Pope. CNN's David Culver is joining me now from the cathedral, and a lot of activity behind you. David, what are you seeing?
Victor, we've been here, as you mentioned, a few days now, and we've seen isolated pockets of memorials for Pope Francis, but this is the mass gathering. This is where you have seen people of all ages coming through here, starting in the early morning hours. I want to walk here a little bit. This is mass, but there's a procession going on right now. You have people who have come in here, Victor, from all parts of the city, Buenos Aires, and then on the outside of the city, they've come in from the provinces, and they've come in from the villas. And that's a really important part, because the villas are those simple, humble, lower income neighborhoods that Pope Francis, when he was then Cardinal Bergoglio, and before that Father Bergoglio, would spend so much of his time in giving of himself and was very present there. I mean, he talked to folks. I rode a bus in with a group of people from one of those villas, and they said he was always there for whatever we needed. And so now this is their time to say goodbye to one of their own. This is the Mass that they're celebrating here. The Archbishop is up there, and they're doing final blessings in this moment as well. And you've also got this mix of, I would say, joyfulness, and there's almost a rally-like attitude. I mean, you see people, they've got their banners, they've got T-shirts they've had made, music has been playing. For them, this is, well, a difficult moment, a celebratory one too.
David, what I really appreciate about your reporting is not only are you showing us the images and bringing us the sentiment, is that you're getting those personal stories from people who've had these interactions with the late Pope. I wonder if you'd share one of those.
So you know what? That has just shocked me, Victor, in the sense of you go into one of these villas and you ask, did you know Pope Francis before he was Pope Francis? And it's so matter-of-fact and calming that people say, oh, yes, of course, he baptized my granddaughter, or he washed my son's feet. I mean, they're so at ease with who he is as a human being. They had him for 76 years here. I think one thing that constantly comes back to me is, even as he was described as being serious as a cardinal here, and he, in his book, wrote that he was worried about making mistakes as a cardinal, once he became Pope, he really felt more at ease to make jokes. And one of those, Victor, he said, a man who spent a lot of time with him, a very good friend, said that the last time he saw him was in January, and he said, to the end, Pope Francis said, let me see you to the door. And he said, Holy Father, you don't have to do that. And he said, I do. I want to make sure you're leaving. I mean, he just had this lightheartedness.
David Culver for us there in Buenos Aires. David, thank you.